So one of the questions that you asked kasi is the factor analysis the question, right? Or is it just the means to answer a question, right? And in general, there are two types that are generated using factor analysis. The first type is factor analysis is the question. Or for example, your research problem is what is the validity of this scale. So either you're creating a new scale and you want to report it, right? So what is the psychometric properties of this scale? And in that case, the research question itself is the requires reporting the factor analysis and the reliability, right? That's, again, we use that when we are actually creating a new scale or when we are culturally adapting it. And the focus of the study is on the measure. Gets? Okay. Now, the second type is the factor analysis and reliability is just part of the methods. Meaning, we have a different research question, but we are just testing the quality of our measures. Right? So, in this case, since we are not, parang the social weather station data is really not a test of, or unless, and I know Schwartz, I think one set of questions actually comes from a scale that was adapted or that was used. So it depends on your question. If your question is, say for example, okay, so for example, if your question, Marielle, is political action, right? So the political action has what? 5 items, right? So here, if the research question is what is the likelihood of Filipinos taking political action, right? So the validity and the reliability is just part of your methods. So you're just using the political action scale to answer the question. Yon. So, nasagot ko ba yung tanong mo?
Ma'am, so pwede bang, wait, so are you saying pwede rin yung factor analysis is the actual question na for this type of exercise? Or is it should be the second type na it's part of the method?
Yeah, it's either, I guess, in this case. It depends on what your question is.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. And I'm sorry if I hirap ng templates, no? Parang, and it's one of the things that we realize. Kasi to be honest, si Rosan before, yung Quanti niya, yung exercises, siya yung nagbibigay ng research problems. Tapos, siya yung magbibigay ng variables. Tapos, gawin nyo na lang. Right? But we decided to move away from that kasi we felt that letting you choose your own variables would be more student-centered. Kasi nga, iba-iba yung interest nyo eh. Baka hindi nyo feel yung, kunwari, we chose this set of variables, baka hindi nyo feel yon. So we were trying to balance student-centered learning principles by letting you choose as opposed to force-fitting or giving you, okay, these are your variables, you do it. So mas application. We were trying to do both by allowing you to choose. But I realized in allowing you to choose, it also makes it a little bit more muddy in terms of you having to think about what's your question. So parang it elevates the difficulty level of the exercises. Pros and cons. On one hand, it is more difficult, but I actually also think it will elevate your critical thinking and your understanding, and hopefully the salience of what you're doing to you, kasi
Ma'am,
your variables are more interesting.
question.
Go.
Ma'am, yeah. What you mentioned earlier na yung factor analysis can actually be the
Question.
in not part of answers the question. So like, ma'am, what type of research question yung ang sagot would be the factor analysis? Like, is this scale or
Yeah.
like
So what is
can this how
the question might be, what are the psychometric, or how valid is this scale? And normally nga, we use
for
it
let's say like
in,
the Philippines set. Okay.
yes. So for example, I know who are using, parang there's a value scale there that is actually coming
Yeah,
from.
that was my question nga ma'am dun sa email kaya ako na confused.
Yes. Sorry. Yes. So if you know for a fact that it's coming from a existing scale and you're just testing the validity and reliability to the Philippines, then yes, that can be a research question. But if not, you just want to use the items to describe a phenomenon, then the factor analysis becomes part just of your method section.
Yung part ma'am where I got more confused was kasi nga it was already based on this theory. So parang you mentioned na yung confirmatory factor analysis. So parang I just veered away from that and stuck with the EFA. Tapos naging
Yeah.
part na lang siya nung method ko.
Okay, that's fine too. You can do that too.
Okay.
I mean, there's
So if it's
yeah.
an existing scale already, we can still use EFA or CFA na yun, ma'am?
Okay. It's a good question. It depends. Sorry, wala kasing tama. Mali ang tama sagot. Okay. If you want to test the validities, say if your question is, what's the validity of the scale when used in the Philippines, you might want to use EFA first. Kasi parang tinetest mo kung lalabas yung number of subscales na pinopropose ng author, right? But if your question is, for example, personality. Okay, so for example, meron na si Neo, meron na siyang 5 types of personality. Pwede kang mag-confirmatory. Kasi hindi mo naman tinetest, parang the research question or problem is not the scale, but it's the answers already to the, parang you want to find out the personality of the Filipinos using the NEO. Igulan ba kayo? Mika, naintindihan mo ba yun? Ulit. Okay. If you're testing the validity of the scale, you can actually do EFA first and then compare it with what is existing, what the author is proposing, right? But say the question is, what is the personality of individuals using NEO, Filipinos using NEO? The choice can be to do confirmatory already, to check whether the scale does conform to the NEO five subscales, because the intent is not so much the scale but the results of it. Does that make sense? Okay. So siguro baka naman makakatulong. I don't know if it will help if you want to share with me what you are thinking of as your research problem, and I can check kung tama ba yung, di ba? So you can tell me, okay, this is my question, these are my variables, tama ba yung ginawa ko? So pwede din natin gawin yun dito if you want. Sige. Other questions? Go, Ina.
Ma'am, medyo technical lang yung questions ko kasi like
Sige, go.
I was looking through the handout kasi that was given. In the handout kasi ma'am, it was very specific to use principal axis. Pero
Yeah.
I was thinking, can't we use like minimal residual and maximum ano din po that was offered in Jamovi, or kailangan talaga principal axis?
Pwede naman, pero why?
Well, ako ma'am, personally, when I use the principal axis, mas mataas yung BIC niya. Tapos when I use like the minimal residual, mas mababa yung BIC niya. Eh, di ba the goal is dapat mas mababa yung BIC?
Okay. As long as you can justify. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Tapos ma'am, isa pa pong question. Kasi for factor loading, di ba po the ideal is for it to have an eigenvalue of less than 1? Is the
Again.
Sorry. The eigenvalue of greater than 1 pala po is the
Correct.
ideal for factor loading. Pero ma'am, in Jamovi, there's also that option to just use parallel analysis. Is that viable? Is that a viable option or not necessarily? Hindi po.
Wag muna. Kasi parang, let's go with the, kumbaga sa alphabet. Doon muna tayo sa basic to make sure you understand it before trying out something. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Yam?
Based on that.
Sorry, Carlos, go.
Because I emailed you about the eigenvalue versus setting specific number of factors. So what I did was I set it to 3 factors because that's when my values turned more valid than if I just set it to 1 eigenvalue.
Okay. But what's the basis for 3?
The scree plot when I checked, the point of inflection was there.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Report that. So what you can say is initially, parang you did factor analysis with the cutoff. You did factor analysis and the scree plot indicated 3 factors, and that's why you ran it again that way. So that's good. And my point here is, as long as you can explain and justify what you did, okay, that's okay. That's okay.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
All right. Other questions?
Ma'am?
Yes,
so
Ina.
following Carlos's question, if based on the scree plot there are 3 factors or 4 factors we could have, then it doesn't necessarily mean kailangan greater than 1 yung eigenvalue nila.
Minsan hindi. Minsan not quite, di ba? Parang falls a little bit short of 1. Pero yun nga eh. And that's where factor analysis it's both a science and an art. Parang there's no, and I think I emphasize that, na parang it is an iterative process. And all you have are certain guides, right? Like the scree plot, the eigenvalue, and parang walang black and white dito na sometimes the eigenvalues are parang it meets that pero it doesn't make sense, so you have to try another. Hindi siya ganun ka-exact eh. Yun talagang nature ng factor analysis. But as long as you can explain at the end why, then that's okay.
Okay, thank you.
Ma'am?
Yes, go.
I have a question. Because the variables I'm using are the ones in the survey that talk about
Can you tell me which names so I can open up my
okay.
code book?
Hold on, ma'am. I'll check again. Okay. I'm using variable 108 to 126. It's the one about looking at confidence at different organizations. So parang the research question I was working with is what is the general level of confidence that Filipinos have on the institutions in the country. So given that kind of question, should I shift my factor analysis from EFA to CFA, or can I stick to EFA so I can determine how many factors I'm supposed to have?
I do suggest you do EFA first. Have you tried EFA?
Yes, I have. I have 2
And how
factors.
many factors? Okay. What are the 2 factors?
There, well, I named them, ma'am. One is more of like advocacy-related organizations because it's UN, humanitarian organization, things like that. Then the other one are more established institutions like government, media, mga ganon. So that's what I have.
Okay. That's okay. Oo. I noticed lang that 108 to 126, weird talaga, minsan weird talaga ng coding ng World Value Survey. Kasi parang 1 is a great deal, pero 4 yung none at all. Di ba? Medyo counterintuitive siya, di ba?
Yes.
Did you recode? Hindi na.
Should I recode, ma'am?
Well, it's up to you. You can, depende. Pero hindi naman kailangan. Pero di ba, medyo counterintuitive lang siya.
Okay.
But yeah,
I can try to recode. But ma'am, I took out the 125 for the European Union because it's a little weird in the stats.
Correct.
No, ma'am, I don't need to use CFA na po.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Guys, sorry. When you report your data, can you report the data set? Because I noticed you guys are using different data sets. So, or pwede bang isang data set lang, parang Philippines lang muna, or for now?
Oh no, ma'am, I used the worldwide.
Oh no, I used the worldwide also.
Okay, fine. Basta you have to
Pero
report.
I indicated it naman, ma'am, na worldwide.
Yeah, you mentioned, ma'am, last time to indicate the data set. So parang nasa dulo may references.
Okay. All right. And then you also need to include it in the sample. When you report the sample, you say that the data is coming from the World Value Survey, blah, 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 blah. Okay. All right. Other questions?
I'm sorry, can I clarify? Like, kunwari, yung research question, yung focus is on factor analysis, yung parang answer. Parang for the methods din, ano yung laman nun? As in yung parang participants lang? Or is there anything else that should be there?
No, you still report the scale. Hindi mo lang i-report yung clusters at saka yung reliability.
Report yung scale. Okay.
You still report the scale. Like how many items, what was the scale used, what is 1 to 5, ganon.
Okay. Okay, ma'am. So just describe the scale in general. Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am, I have a question. Follow-up lang po.
Go.
Kasi ang kinuha kong mga items po yung sa gender roles, V49 to V54.
Okay.
Using yung Philippine, US, and Japan datasets po. So, basically, yung mga basics naman, nilagay ko na like sa eigenvalues, tapos yung factor loadings. Tapos I ended up with just 1 factor.
Okay.
Okay lang po ba yun? I-report ko na lang po kasi...
Yeah. Kung wala talaga.
Wala talaga.
Isang factor lang.
Yeah, and kasi, ang tawag dito, I started writing it na. So, hindi ko na siya mapalitan. Kasi
and the reliability of the factor of 1 factor is good.
Okay naman po siya. Actually, baka nga mabawasan pa po para tumaas po yung reliability pa. So baka ang matira po 3 na lang na items tapos 1 factor.
Okay.
Okay lang po ba yun? So kahit walang ibang factor na.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ma'am, I would like to clarify. What does that mean po kung okay yung reliability niya, pero yung lines of good fit niya mababa?
Saan to? Sorry. What are you referring to, Trisha?
Yung items po are B198 to B210, yung actions that, yung justification of certain actions like claiming government benefits, prostitution, abortion, suicide.
Okay. So, okay yung reliability niya?
Yes, pero yung sa lahat ng models of with yung RMSEA and CLI and everything.
Hindi na nami-meet.
Hindi na-meet. Is that okay po? Or what can I do?
When you say hindi niya nami-meet, gaano kalayo dun sa cut-offs?
Parang it's greater than the standard of good fit.
By how much?
I have to open it. But if konti lang po yung gap, okay lang po yun.
Kasi 'di ba meron tayo kunyari RMSEA is 0.06, 'di ba? Ganyan. Tapos depende kasi kung 0.08, 'di ba? Kung maliit lang naman yung difference, that's okay. Parang you just report it na lang.
Oh, okay. If not,
yung one factor hindi good fit. Tama ba? Is that what you're saying?
I have output niya is 2 factors and
okay. Ano ang okay, go. Sorry.
Kasi matakot ako baka
You want to share? Can you share?
wait.
Do you want to share? Do you want to show us? Or do you want to show me?
Wag lang mami, open ko na.
Okay. So the question of, sige, while you're opening it up, the question of Tel is, kung 3 items lang, the RMSEA does not seem to show up. Did other people encounter this as well? Yes?
Yes, ma'am, I did also.
Okay. Sige. So apparently, meron siyang default na kailangan mas maraming number of items. In that case, you don't have to report. Okay. So to be honest, itong mga fit indices, hindi siya, medyo hindi siya common pa na ginagamit. So mas traditional yung reliability at saka yung EFA. So ito medyo advanced to, not a lot of are using it yet. So okay. Kit, what if only 2 items are acceptable? Do we report? Okay. It's okay to, you have to balance out. So Kit, my question is, yung 2 items na yon, maganda ba yung reliability?
I'll check po.
Oo. Kasi parang iba-balance mo siya kasi minsan, pag sobrang konti ng items, pangit naman yung reliability. So really, the goal here is to have the most, parang it has to have sana short but reliable. So you have to kind of balance. You can't just take out items without checking on whether it will, on its effect on reliability. Sige.
I'm using the same variables din as Mika, yung V70 to 79. And I remember, ma'am, I consulted and emailed you if I should recode. Tapos, before po ako mag-recode, yung 3 lang yung items na okay or acceptable sa kanya. Pero nung nag-recode ako, naging parang 2 na lang siya since mababa yung, parang my sample is only around 100 something.
Why? Bakit 100 lang?
Ma'am, I tried to continue po from yung previous exercise.
Okay.
So,
okay, that's an issue because sometimes pag maliit yung sample mo, pumapangit talaga yung psychometric properties mo. So, and remember, parang one of the requirements for sample size for FA is a large enough.
Yes. 100 to 1,000 dito.
So I suggest, Kit, don't use a small sample size.
Right,
Lakihan mo yung sample size mo. Kasi malamang yung psychometric properties niya gaganda habang lumalaki yung sample.
Right, ma'am. Thank you po.
Can you try that again using a bigger sample?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Same tell. So originally, you used just a Philippine data set, but when you use the global, okay ba? Mas okay ba siya?
Better.
Yeah. So sometimes it's really sample size talaga. Sige. Okay.
Ma'am, question. Quick lang. So if let's say we have a bigger sample size, but we still stick with the factor loading that's 0.4.
You can. If you actually the bigger your sample size, pwedeng the lower the.
But we can also
factor
follow
loading.
yung nasa handout
Yeah.
in the module in the video.
Yes, the bigger the sample size, the smaller the factor loading minimum, diba? Yeah. Yeah. Tama ba yun? The smaller the sample size, the higher the required factor loading.
Parang for 1,000, it can be 0.16.
Correct.
Yeah.
Pwede rin. Okay. Sorry, Trisha? You wanna go back to you?
Wait, ma'am. It's still loading.
It's a loading. Sige. All right. Other questions? Yes,
Sorry.
Ina.
Ma'am, I just have a question. What if po, after we've done factor analysis, it showed us 2 factors, no?
Okay.
But then when we checked on reliability, only factor 1 was reliable, factor 2 was not. So I'm thinking, ma'am, would it be viable to say na parang we'll just use the items in factor 1 because we won't use the items in factor 2 na? Or do we have to redo the whole factor analysis?
That's a good question. Can I know what variables you're working with?
Wait lang, mama. This was just one of my trials, but then I have to check the code book.
Okay. Well, pag ganon, we can do one of 2 things, right? One is you can drop that scale that's not reliable if it's super unreliable. Okay? Kunyari, parang 0.3, 0.4, talagang sayang lang. Okay? And then, if depending on your iterations, kasi baka naman it's really just one scale. Diba? And the reliability is good. Then just use it as an entire scale. Wag mo nang pilitin mag-subscales siya. Okay?
So, ma'am, that would mean I would take out all the items that loaded in factor 2.
Depends. Did you do EFA or CFA? What did you do?
EFA po, EFA.
EFA. Tapos nag-load talaga siya.
Into 2 factors. Pero the second factor was unreliable.
So how unreliable was it?
Hindi ko pa po na-check.
So yun. Yes, if you want, you can take out those na hindi masyado reliable and just keep the one that's there, right? And again, it depends on what your goal is. Parang what's your research question is. There are times when, and I'm sorry if there's no black and white answer to this. There are times when, for example, I've used a scale from another country. And when I ran EFA, parang iba yung structure niya from what the author is proposing. Pero pangit yung reliabilities nung subscales, di ba? So I've also, sometimes what I've done is I've disregarded the subscales and just used the total score. Kasi the total score is parang the total reliability of that scale is good and ganon. So that's what I worked with. Iba-iba eh. Like for example, we were struggling recently with a coping scale that we were using for a COVID study. Dun sa scale, parang 8 coping strategies dapat. Pero nung nira namin, ang pangit ng reliabilities nung 8, hindi talaga siya lumalabas. Ang lumabas, 2 lang. Parang, and we were able to identify, okay, adaptive versus maladaptive coping. And those are the only 2 na maayos yung reliabilities. So, we reported it as that, na parang, okay, we're not using the original subscales because hindi reliable. This is the subscales that we're using because it also made sense and we could justify why. So, again, parang there's not an exact science there. If you can justify why those items will be dropped, then why you're just keeping this, then that's fine also.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Trisha, anything? Go.
Yung RMSEA po is 0.124.
Taas.
And then the TLI is 0.815.
Okay. And your sample size is big enough?
Yung worldwide po.
Worldwide, okay. But your reliabilities are okay?
Okay naman po lahat,
Okay,
surprisingly.
That's fine. For the purpose of the exercise, you can still report it.
Okay.
But many researchers will just report up to reliability.
Okay.
I mean, if you take a look at journal articles, hanggang reliability lang nire-report ngayon, di ba? So sabi ko sa inyo, medyo advanced yung ibang fit indices na yan. And that's actually only Jamovi right now that has that. So, yeah. Okay. Questions? Other questions?
Ma'am, question.
Go.
Kasi I noticed na, for example, kapag one variable lang yung pinili ko, one set of items, one factor lang talaga yung minsan lumalabas.
Correct.
So, what I did po is I choose parang 3 related variables. So, for example, I choose...
tell me what variables you chose.
For example, V212 to V216, which pertains to belongingness.
Wait, V212, sorry.
And
Sundan lang kita. V212, okay. Okay, and then?
Tapos, V102 and V107, which is about trust.
Okay. Okay.
Tapos, I choose another. So, I have 3 variables, 3 set of variables. For example, yung isa naman is about yung confidence to organization. So, V108 to 119.
Okay.
So,
yun ang factor analysis mo?
Opo.
And then?
Po ba yun? So, lumabas, tama na I have 3 factors po, which is reliable din and pasok sa eigenvalues naman po.
What's your research question, Mike?
So, I'm trying to confirm po kasi I found an article that's about Filipino collectivism. So, I'm trying to see po kung, for example, si belongingness, trust, and confidence to several organizations would pertain to collectivism po.
Okay.
So, should I use EFA
Sandali ha. Oo. My only concern with that, Mikey, is your scales are they all the same? Are they all 4-point scale? Yes, but pero iba-iba yung legend niya, di ba? Parang yung iba, trust, like ito, yung 102 is trust completely. But your 212 uses a different scale. Correct?
Apo.
Strongly agreed. Parang feeling ko naman you're putting together apples and oranges.
Okay.
Right? So,
should I use one set of variable na lang po instead of 3? Then, kung isang factor lang po yung lumabas, then yun na lang po yung report ko.
Okay. So, I've seen some articles where the purpose of the article is psychometric properties, and they're doing what is called parang construct validity. They're putting together scales under EFA with the expectation that the scales will load according to, kunwari, they're testing 2 scales and dapat maglo-load siya yung items into 2. Okay. So I've seen that actually. But the research problem there is to test the validity of the scale. In your case, your question is not about the scale. It's about the phenomenon, right? So it kind of doesn't make sense to mix together items from the different numbers into one factor analysis. Kasi iba-iba yung mini-measure niya.
Okay po.
Okay, so the only time you can do that, parang put together under FA items on different scales, and if the research question is about testing the scales themselves.
Yes, ma'am.
Gets? Okay.
Okay po. Thank you.
Okay. Ayan, Mika. Same question. Oo. Other questions?
Ma'am?
Yes.
You mentioned po earlier that we have the option to put the psychometric properties in just the methods portion and then answer, use a different, or like use descriptive stats to answer a research question. If ganun po, ma'am, since we're measuring multiple variables, so for example, if we use measures of central tendency, should we look at mean and standard deviation of each of the variables po, or just look at it
As a whole,
like per factor?
Okay. Sorry. Can you give me something more concrete? Can you give me your research question and your variables so I can...
Okay. This is the one I mentioned po earlier about the level of confidence. So I have 18 variables po kasi. So if I'm looking po at the level of confidence of Filipinos for different institutions, and then I split it based on the two factors that I came up with, if I use descriptive stats po, should I report it as per variable?
Okay. That's a good question. Okay. So, what are those variable names again? Sorry.
Variable 108 po to 126.
Okay. That's a good question. So, you have found two types, right? Two types of, okay. So, what you can do is, so you have two clusters of, right? So, kunyari, international and the national, halimbawa, right? Okay. So, you find two clusters. Now, what do you report now, right?
Yes, po.
What you can do is, if you want, if the research question, if you want to report, for example, this is the overall confidence in national vis-a-vis international, for example, right? So what you would need to do is actually create a new variable.
Okay.
Do you know how to do that in Jamovi?
I learned it po, but I haven't tried it.
So you would actually do, sorry, I'm going to share screen. Right. So what you would actually need to do is create a new variable. Say, kunyari, confidence national. Kunyan. Right? And then you would actually create mean. Or ganyan. Halimbawa, mean.
Okay.
Okay? And then here would be your kunyari lang, ganyan. Right?
Yes, po.
Right? So, once you create this, so if you take a look at your data set, dapat may bago siyang lumabas na variable. Sorry. Wala. Saan nag-compute? There, okay? So, lumabas na siya, di ba?
Yes.
So, ngayon, ang i-report mo yung mean nito. Mean na nung bago mong variable.
Okay.
So now you can report the mean of your new variable. Yan. Yan. Yan na yung i-report mo.
Oh,
Tapos i-report mo
okay.
din yung mean nung kabila.
Okay. So I just look po for the mean of each computed new mean of each factor and then run
Yes.
descriptives.
Yes.
Okay. Okay po.
So
Sige.
for the
Thank
rest,
you, ma'am.
ganun din kayo. If you have yun nga, parang a scale, then you create a mean score for that scale, and that's what you report in the descriptives.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. Other questions? Parang sumakit ulo nyo dun ano?
Sorry, may question po ako. Sorry, clarify ko lang po. Balik po ako dun sa eigenvalue sa factor loadings. Kasi sabi ni Mika, na-mention niya na parang sa factor loadings, pag marami po yung, kunwari yung sample is 1,000 and above, pwede pong i-pick yung mga factor loadings with 0.16. Pero kailangan din po namin i-balance kung pasok siya sa eigenvalue. Kasi 0.16 nga po siya pero hindi naman po papasok sa eigenvalue. Hindi siya papasok as dalawang factor. Hindi pa rin siya pwede. I mean, I would still choose not to include it, right?
Yes. If for example, even if you include it, pero it's creating one factor that by itself and it's not reliable.
Right.
The scale also. Parang, so yun nga parang sobrang iterative itong factor analysis and psychometric property testing. Parang ang daming iterations before you come up with a good scale that is both reliable and valid. So yeah. Okay, wait guys, can we take a 5-minute break? I just need to grab my charger and plug in. Hindi ko pala nadala dito. Can we do that? Let me just take a break for just give me a couple minutes to grab my charger. And then if you have any questions, pag-isipan nyo na. Balik ako. All right, guys. So I'm back. Have I answered all your questions? Wait. Kit, was I able to answer your question about the two items? If there are only two items acceptable? Sorry, are you back yet?
Yes, ma'am. Na-answer na po kanina, ma'am.
All right. Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you.
Okay, so there may have been other questions or other things that you want me to show you how to do. Marielle, anything?
Ma'am, I guess last na,
Go.
ma'am. Parang with regards to yung EFA and confirmatory, like, pwede ba we stick to EFA lang talaga, ma'am?
Yeah.
For now?
Yeah.
Okay.
In fact, confirmatory analysis we only do when you already have either a theory or there's an existing scale that you're just culturally adapting. But for example, in this case, where if you're not sure where the items are coming from, the safest is to do EFA lang muna. Okay. And then, hindi ko alam kung napapansin nyo, yung level of difficulty tumataas kasi, di ba, kada exercise. So, in the first exercise, parang simple descriptives lang. So, in this exercise, parang it's psychometric properties plus descriptive stats. So, parang medyo nagbi-build yung level of difficulty in the, but your questions don't have to be parang, in fact, you will find out na parang ang dami yung ginawang statistic. Tapos at the end of the day, mean lang yung i-report ninyo nung scale na yon, right? Na parang feeling niya siguro, ang dami-dami kong ginawa, tapos ito lang yung data. Ganun talaga. Ganun talaga, ha? Parang, for every research question, minsan ang dami mong ginawang back of the house statistics. Pero, to answer your research question, ito lang, itong stat lang na to. Itong mean lang nung subscale na ito or ito grupo to. Yun na yan. Okay. So, my suggestion is, when you articulate your research problems, you don't have to, at least for this exercise, keep it simple. Di ba? Simplehan nyo lang. Wag muna kayong mag-comparative questions at this point. Parang, huwag niyong komplikahin masyado yung buhay ninyo.
I'm sorry, last na again. Parang yung
Don't apologize, Marielle.
From 190, kasi I'm planning to use yung variables from 198 to 210, yung tungkol sa parang moral issues. So to clarify, okay lang na exploratory gamitin ko dito. Pero kasi I saw nga na may scale na siya based on.
Which one? What is the scale based on?
Yung parang morally debatable behavior scale.
So parang meron, and is it using the exact items and the exact scale?
Parang oo, ma'am, eh. I'll have to recheck again. Pero parang, so okay lang ba EFA pa rin?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
Thank you, ma'am.
How many clusters lumabas? How many factors lumabas, Marielle?
Well, I basically had to delete some items, ma'am. Pero 2 factors yung nag-load.
2 factors lang. Okay. And were you able to identify those 2 clusters? Did that 2 clusters make sense?
Yes, ma'am. It made sense po.
Okay. And they're both reliable?
Yes, po.
Okay. Sure. Okay. Other questions?
Ma'am?
Go.
I have more of a technical question po about the paper. Because I think in the first exercise, I put all the tables po talaga that I used from Jamovi. So, which ones po are the ones that we don't really need to report na?
Okay.
Like, instead of table, just paragraph form na lang po.
Yeah, okay. So, the general rule kasi, and if you notice, for those of you who are already reading journal articles, right, you'll find that most journal articles will only have a couple of tables, right?
Yes,
Hindi siya sobrang dami. Bakit? Well, pragmatically, that's because of space issues. Or dati kasi, nung piniprint yung journals, pag maraming tables, maraming papel, mas magastos. Diba? So brevity became a concern. It also teaches us to determine alin ba talaga yung kailangan ilagay sa table, alin yung kailangan ilagay sa paragraph. So the rule of thumb is the table should highlight the most important data, right? So for example, in this case, definitely a table on the factor loadings would be important, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you have more than one factor loading, then yes, you do need to show, right? Something like reliability, kung isang figure lang siya, hindi mo siya nire-report sa table. Basta is pag isang variable lang siya sa isang table, wag ka na mag-table. I-report mo na lang in paragraph form. Okay? It's only when you have multiple data to report and it makes sense to summarize them into a table, then that's when you report the table. Okay? So there are some of you actually submitted exercise, your first exercise, na walang table. And I did not ding you for that. Because kung wala talaga, di wala. Huwag niyong pilitin na may table. Okay? So, yeah, be judicious about your use of tables. I also don't know if you read my announcement. Can you just go to the announcement section? What I did there is I actually summarized some of the common sort of mistakes that I was seeing across the exercises. And just to, I understand it's your first time. For many of you, you're not used to writing this way. But I highlighted 6 things, right? So my first suggestion is, it's better if you choose questions and variables that are related to each other, so that rather than focusing on 2 variables that are different, parang there's more cohesion in your paper, okay? I also actually did appreciate those of you who took the time to write a short intro for your variables as well. And then you should state your research problems explicitly, but you actually don't need to force a hypothesis at this point. Kasi usually, di ba, a hypothesis is derived when we have literature already backing us up. Since we're not requiring you to do a lit review, it's okay to just do a research problem na walang hypothesis. All right. And then when you state your problem, assume that your sample represents the population. So you don't say, what is the life satisfaction of this sample? So you say, what is the life satisfaction of Filipinos? So you're assuming that the sample does represent your population. Don't use variable labels in your research problems or in your data or in your tables. So assume that the person reading your paper does not have intimate knowledge of your data set. So they don't care what V30 means, or they don't know what V30 is. So you need to state, what is that variable? Okay, so parang you need to make your exercise or your output readable to a lay person. Okay, avoid yan. Yung iba medyo writing issues. Don't use 1-sentence paragraphs. Some of you have kilometric sentences that take up an entire paragraph. Okay, and then yes, be judicious in your use of tables. So these are the parang common issues that I noticed in your exercises.
Thank you, ma'am.
Sure. Anything else? Okay, questions? Okay. If there are no more questions, I'm just going to share with you. I just wanted to consult you on this. Okay. So what I did to address your the concern for more sort of understanding or hands-on is I put a demo session at the start of each module. So for example, next week, we begin a new module. So I'm going to do a demo session, which is synchronous on group defenses. Okay? The downside to this is it'll be hard for you to appreciate a demo session if you haven't gone through the material. Kasi 'di ba, para nagde-demo na hindi niyo pa nagigets yung content. So it would be useful if you at least go through the materials first bago ako mag-demo. Okay? Unless you want me to move the demo session here. What's your preference? Go.
Ma'am, nahalata ko lang wala yung October 31. Di ba that's also a Saturday?
Hindi ba holiday yun?
Okay. All
Hindi ba
right.
holiday yun? Hindi ba holiday yun?
I don't know. I guess it is.
Okay, so question. Do you want me to move this demo session to the 24th or to the 17th? Anong gusto niya?
24th.
24th na lang.
Apo. The poll that we asked, everyone wanted the demo session a week before the submission.
Okay, got it. All right. Dali naman ako kausap. Okay. There. Okay, so this is now. Okay, so this is now the demo session. Okay, so the host on the same time na lang. Ganun ba yun? So wala na akong check-in session. Parang napagitnaan siya. Ganun ba yun? Tama ba to? Or did you also want a check-in session on the day that you are supposed to submit? You have to tell me. What do you want? Ito. So I have a demo. So we have a demo session on the 24th, right? But your submission is on the 7th. Do you still want a check-in session on that day? Are you chatting your response? Or how do I know what you want? Yes po, RM. RM, sorry. What were you answering? Is the yes po? Yes to check-in session. Okay. Okay. So parang ito yung mga last minute na gusto ninyong katanungan bago kayo mag-submit. All right. Got it. So the hosting is during the check-in session. Yes?
Yes,
okay.
Ma'am.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Next, November 7. Kailan tayo magde-demo session? Okay to? Kasi itong November 21 is the submission. Is this okay? All right. Okay. My last question. So parang nag-flip, no? Parang 2/3 are synchronous na. Imbis na dapat, sinabihan kami dapat 1/3 yung synchronous, 2/3 yung asynchronous. Parang ngayon, parang baliktad na. 2/3 na yung synchronous, 1/3 na lang yung asynchronous. But that's fine. This is quantitative, so we can, justify. Okay, my last question. Since wala sa inyong PhD and none of you are actually required to submit papers, do you want to move the finals to December 19 instead? Do you want a poll? Meron sa inyo parang gusto nang magpahinga after December 12. Yung iba gusto sagarin. RM, can we do a poll?
I agree with RM.
Can we do a poll, RM?
Not here, ma'am, because I have no access to your editing. I'll make a different
Wait. Can I do a poll? How do I do a poll? Sorry. Can I do a poll? How do I do a poll nga?
Balik ko pa sa iyo yung host.
Okay, how do I do a poll, RM?
Dapat po on the lower side of your window, there should be a poll option.
Oh, there. Okay, got it. Okay. You see it na?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Ma'am, question while everyone else is answering. Course related. Ma'am, how would our paper, kasi like I'm taking the non-thesis track, pero di ba we have the cornerstone project? How would our paper for the cornerstone project be different from the thesis track? Which is definitely on research. So, but for our cornerstone project.
Okay. So typically, alam niyo ba yung difference between basic and applied research? Have you gone through that class na wala pa? Oh, sige. So parang you can classify research into two types. Basic, which means that your results are something that can be generalized across populations, across organizations. And applied, which means that your data is specific to either a population or an organization. Okay. So parang ang gagamit niyan, may specific audience ka. Ang thesis option, usually the researches that are generated are what we call basic research, meaning the results that you generate can be used by different populations. Parang it doesn't have to be one company or one school or ganyan. Okay? Ang cornerstone project or CP usually are applied. So both are research in a sense. Medyo mas maano lang yung CP is more specific to a school or a company or a community na yung data na i-gather mo is either to design an intervention, to evaluate a curriculum, to provide a diagnosis. So both are research, magkaiba lang yung goal at intent niya. Does that make sense?
Yes, a lot. It's a lot of people are convincing us to shift to thesis kasi nga daw may research pa rin din yung cornerstone and it's like it's a shorter period yata.
Okay. Well, it depends on what your goal is. Okay?
Yeah.
Many of our students, kung ang goal ninyo is practitioner talaga, then just between us, mas mataas yung graduation rate ng thesis. Kasi nga, the thesis parang the requirement is something that they can do because of their work or in their jobs or in their, yung ganon. So medyo mas feasible or parang mas nagagawa nila yung CP. Yung thesis kasi, because of the requirements of it has to be generalizable, etc., minsan dun napapako yung student sa gathering data. dun sila nahihirapan. Kasi it can't be just from one company, for example. It has to be across multiple companies. So that's one. The second is, may plano ka ba mag-PhD? Or magturo sa university? Kung may plano kang magturo sa university or mag-PhD, I would suggest you stick with the thesis track. Kasi, mas yun yung hahanapin ng employers mo or ng PhD program. Yung ganong klaseng orientation and skill set. So, yun.
Ma'am, although Ateneo still doesn't offer yung PsyD.
Hindi pa.
PsyD ang, it's okay lang naman. Mas ano talaga yun, diba? It's the practitioner. So, like, the non-thesis is okay. Okay.
Yes. Kung ang goal mo halimbawa, practice, tapos licensure, ganyan, a non-thesis option is okay. And it's, yeah. And we find na parang, we've been trying to dispel people's notion na parang non-thesis is a lower, parang lower level, parang ganun. Sa akin, it doesn't matter. We have excellent students in either program. So one is not lower than the other. It really depends on what your career goal is.
Thank you, ma'am.
Nagka-career counseling questions na tayo. May tanong pa ba kayo? Okay. Alright. So, it looks like December 12. Aba, gusto nyo matapos na maaga, ha? Sige. That's okay, too. Alright. So, we will do, yeah, sure. I'm fine with that. More time. Alright. Okay. So, looks like this is now the new schedule. Sorry, I will share back my screen. And, sige. So, parang ito na yung bagong schedule natin, ha? So, parang for next week, so break time. After this week, we take a break. And then, parang sunod-sunod yung synchronous natin. Again, these are optional. If you can't check in, we'll just try to tape these sessions. Okay, questions, comments? So are we good? Okay na ba tayo? All right. Okay na?